control and influence, powerless in the face of the people's power. We ask, is this the dawn of a new Middle East? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
Home to a diversity of rare species, Latvia's pristine woodlands are a place of magic. But with a strained economy and an eager market, forests are rapidly perishing, and with them their inhabitants. People and Power investigates how 60% of Latvia's timber ends up on UK shelves with a questionable seal of approval. Latvia's pulp fiction, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Again, this is the News Hour from Al Jazeera. Adrian Finnegan here in Doha. The top stories this hour. Pro-democracy protests in Egypt pull in the biggest crowds yet in Cairo's Liberation Square. They still want President Hosni Mubarak to go, despite the government's promise of constitutional reforms. But the man at the centre of the storm tried to give the impression that it was business as usual today. Hosni Mubarak welcomed his first foreign guest since the unrest began. He held discussions with the Emirati foreign minister. France's prime minister has admitted that Mubarak paid for him and his family to go on holiday in Egypt. Francois Fillon was also provided with a plane to go sightseeing. Let's speak now to Hossam El Hamalawi, who's a blogger and activist based in Cairo. He joins us now live on the line from the Egyptian capital. Where are you, Hossam? What's happening around you?
I left Tahrir Square a couple of hours ago, but today I am happy to say that it was one of the most successful days since the start of the uprising, since the turnout in the square, as your viewers can see, had been one of the biggest. And similar turnout also was in Alexandria and in several other provinces, some of which did not witness strong protests before, like Al-Wadi Jadid, the New Valley, where the police had unfortunately shot dead 3 protesters and injured 400, according to reports. And similar protests were reported in Mansoura, in Mahalla. But the most interesting thing about today is that we started seeing the intervention of the organized working class. Already 1,000 workers in Suez, Lavarge company, had announced a strike and over a list of demands, including the support of the revolution, in addition to establishing free unions. University professors assembled in front of their club in Manial in Giza and marched over Tahrir Square. Media personnel at the State TV building, which has been launching a vicious demonizing campaign against protesters, have started also to organize against this editorial policy. And in one of the most sensationalist tabloids we have, which is Rosa Youssef, it's a pro-regime publication, the employees at the institution stopped the 2 editors who are known to be loyal to Mubarak from entering the building. In addition, telecommunication workers took to the streets today in Ramses Square and in a few other places. And although they were protesting over work conditions and bonuses, but they were mimicking and repeating the chants that the Tahrir revolutionaries were chanting.
Okay. Hossam, we were talking a few minutes before you came on about small business owners and fishermen who are being hurt by these ongoing protests. You're talking about these general strikes. Given that so many people are in under enormous financial stress at the moment, how well observed, how well supported do you think these strikes that you've talked about will be?
The reason for the economic malaise the country is going through at the moment is the regime, not the protesters, as the State TV have been trying to blame. And those who are instigating those strikes are not necessarily agitated by the activist community, but it's by workers who feel that their demands are not met and they have exceeded even the economic boundaries to start demanding political demands. I am sure that there will be sectors in the population currently among the business elites, which your channel had a fantastic feature about 2 days ago, who are affected. But honestly, those are parasites who have also thrived under the Mubarak dictatorship. And as for the small businesses, I know some of them have been hurt, but in general, you should have seen the support given to the marches today in Cairo by the shop owners in downtown.
Okay, Hossam, many thanks indeed. Hossam El Hamalawi there, a blogger and activist based in Cairo, expressing opinions that run counter to what our correspondent was saying a short while ago. Well, as these protests in Egypt continue, its neighbour in the region, Israel, is keeping a pretty close eye on developments. Now, Israel is worried about its old ally, President Hosni Mubarak, but could be eyeing up a new friend in his deputy, Omar Suleiman. Tony Bertley reports from Jerusalem.
The fight for democracy on the streets of Cairo, the concern for the future in the corridors of power in Israel. As Netanyahu's government comes to terms with the departure of an authoritarian friend in Egypt, the fear of what kind of regime emerges is consuming events.
There is a second possibility, that the Islamists exploit the influence to gradually take the country into a reverse direction, not towards modernity and reform, but backward.
Israel's preferred choice is the Vice President Omar Suleiman, with whom they've done business in the past. The former chief of Egyptian intelligence has had close contacts with his Israeli counterparts. They like his stand against what they term the Islamic threat.
Omar Suleiman appears from an Israeli perspective to be the best chance for Israel to still be able to have a neighbor to its south, which is led by a government that believes in the peace treaty with Israel, believes that it is a strategic asset for Egypt, like Israel believes that it's a strategic asset for Israel.
That's not something Egypt's rank and file will warm to, especially after revelations by WikiLeaks. Documents taken from US embassies reportedly show that Suleiman demonized Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood and accused them of spawning armed extremists. The organization has always claimed to follow the path of peace, but now Suleiman is attempting a dialogue. Israel has enjoyed a 30-year peace with its neighbor, which has provided much-needed security on its southern border and acted as a block to any attempts for weapons to be smuggled into Gaza. Israel has always prided itself on being the only democracy in the Middle East, but it has always sided with friendly authoritarian regimes who've either been good for business or good for security. And like with many other Western governments, financial gain and self-interest nearly always take precedence over morality. Mubarak was the latest strongman ruler friend. Others include Tan Shui in Burma, and in the past the Shah of Iran and General Pinochet in Chile. Israel has long made money from selling weapons to authoritarian regimes and unsavory governments. That doesn't seem to worry the majority of the Israeli public, who believe security is the most important factor governing their lives. Most fear the emergence of an Islamic government in Egypt, and most believe it will happen. Israel has shown it can handle Arab repression. Arab democracy may prove more difficult. Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, Jerusalem.
And supporters of the protest in Egypt have been making their voices heard in Jordan's capital, Amman. Demonstrators gathered near the Egyptian embassy. They held banners condemning President Hosni Mubarak and called for a quick transition of power. To Haiti now, where the government appears to have granted a passport to an exiled former leader. For more on that, let's cross to Shihab Ratanzi in our Washington, D.C. news center. Shihab.
Adrian, a spokeswoman for Haiti's government says that a diplomatic passport has been prepared for the ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. However, authorities have set a condition that Aristide's lawyer, who is already in the country, must collect the document. Aristide was Haiti's first democratically elected leader. He was forced from power in 2004 and has lived in South Africa in exile since. The latest development coming at a time of political crisis. A date for a second round of presidential elections has now been set after a disputed first round. And the former leader, Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier, has returned to the country and is facing human rights charges. For more, Sebastian Walker joins us from Port-au-Prince. So a passport's been prepared, but is it going to be issued?
Well, Shihab, we still don't know until it actually is delivered to Aristide's lawyer. That's not clear. We are hearing from Haitian government officials, very senior officials, that this passport has been prepared. But certainly, I mean, I spoke with Aristide's lawyer just a little earlier, and he's certainly not giving any confident predictions of what's going to happen. He did say that he had not yet received the passport. He said he was here in the Haitian